Okay, before you start spending money on lead generation, or before you go to spend any more money on lead generation, I want you to stop and take 3 steps back. Because the reality is for most business owners, they have a shotgun approach to the lead generation. Meaning they're like, oh, I need to generate leads. And they just start shooting guns and they sign up to different lead generation companies. And there's no method to their madness. And the problem with this, when there's no method to your madness, is you can either undershoot your goal or overshoot it, and you end up missing your mark. So what I want you to stop doing is putting your blindfold on, spinning around 3 times and hoping you're gonna hit your target, because that's not a great way to do business. And in this video, I'm gonna break down a formula that I've used not only in my real estate business, but 3 other businesses that I built to 7 and 8 figures. Okay, so let's dive into it. So the very, very first step is you have to understand what your conversion rate is depending on the lead that you're purchasing. Now, if you don't know your conversion rate because you're brand new at lead generation, or maybe this is a brand new lead source, then what you want to do is you want to take the industry average of that lead source. You can either ask the person that you're generating the lead from, or you can look it up on ChatGPT. But it's really, really important to understand what the average conversion rate on leads are. So industry standard on internet leads, as an example, is somewhere between 1 and 5%. I like to use the number 2% because it gives you a number to go off of when it comes to converting leads. So the next part of the process is you want to factor in your sphere of influence, or what I call your warm market. Because the reality is that if you're just spending money on new lead generation and you're not tapping into your database, your cost of sale is going to skyrocket, and it's going to be very expensive for you to do business. Now, sometimes you have to do this depending on your market. If you don't have a warm market, then it's just something you have to deal with when you're getting off the ground. But the goal is to transition your new leads to become your warm market and then cultivate those leads. And if you take your warm market serious, then you really have what I call the ultimate lead generation machine, because you have new leads coming in, you're feeding your database, and you're cultivating your database. And now that on top of your warm market will give you a really good idea of how many transactions you can pull out of your warm market and new leads. So let's break this down a step further. So by understanding the difference between new leads and what the conversion rate in new leads is and your warm market, now you can start calculating what your lead generation goal should be to make sure you hit your sales targets. So for this specific example, I'm just gonna say 200 sales. So understanding the conversion rates that we talked about 1 to 3%, and we're gonna just kind of use the number 2%. So that means that if you wanted to get 200 sales in real estate, you would need 10,000 leads over the course of the year. Mind blowing, right? Now, before you get like all crazy about that amount of leads, I want you to also take a step back and remember, we haven't factored in our warm market yet. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna say, okay, out of my warm market, I'm gonna be able to pull, let's just say 70 transactions out of my warm market, or whatever the number is for you. Well, that's going to dramatically reduce the amount of leads that you need to generate, because you're factoring in your past clients, your referrals, and the business you're going to get from your warm market. And that's why it's important to make sure that you're factoring in both, because one of the things I can't stand in this industry, and I can't stand when coaches and consultants talk about lead generation, is they do it in a definitive way that they should do this or that. And here's the problem. This or that doesn't work, because you need a balanced approach. I call this your flywheel. So in other words, you need to be able to pull business from new leads, the people that you don't know, but also you need to be able to pull business from people that you do know. It's about the 2 of them coming together, and then if you provide great service, that's going to feed into generating new leads, and that's how you create massive momentum in your business. And then over time, you need less and less leads because your database is getting bigger. So it's really, really important, again, to make sure you factor in the 2. Now that you've done that, now that you've factored in both your new leads and your warm market, you can then calculate what your budget should be for new lead generation. So let's talk about what your budget should be for new lead generation. So for sake of this example, let's assume that you don't have a warm market, okay? So what you would do is you break down how many leads you need per month out of the 10,000, and then figure out how much that's going to cost you. So the first thing you would want to do is break down how many leads that you need per month. Approximately around 800 leads or so. It's 834 leads to be exact that you would need per month. And then what you have to do is you have to figure out, okay, what is my cost per lead, or what you call CPL? What your cost per lead is, and driving that cost per lead as low as possible without compromising the quality of the lead. Once you figure this out, now you can come up with what your monthly budget should be to make sure you're hitting that just under 900 leads per month, and you can figure out what your monthly dollar amount will be. So in this specific example, a healthy number would be to look at a $10 cost per lead. You can also, obviously there's more expensive leads and that would drive the cost up. My personal preference is that if you spend a lot of money on expensive leads, they can close at a higher rate, but you have to be really, really, really good at what you do, and your conversion rate has to be really good, because if you suck at follow-up and your conversion rate's poor, okay, you can virtually bankrupt your business in some cases if you're only doing 6 and 7 figures, because next thing you know it, to get any sort of meaningful amount of leads to hit your transaction goal, you're spending $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 on a lead source. So let me tell you a story. I have a client that I was working with, and I was helping go through her budget, and she was working with Realtor.com. She actually had a $16,000 budget, and her goal was to do $1 million in gross commissions earned off this budget. When I dug down into this budget, I found out that she was spending $7,500 a month on Realtor.com, and she was going broke because her cash flow wasn't picking up fast enough to accommodate that lead generation cost. So if you look at her budget, because of how much money she was spending on Realtor.com versus the cost per lead, her cost per lead was over $100. She wasn't bringing in enough leads to even hit her transaction goal and closing those leads at a high enough rate, but yet she was spending almost half of her freaking overall operational budget on Realtor.com. Now, I don't know about you, but that is a losing formula. So the question is how much money should you spend on marketing, and then trying to figure out your cost per lead within that marketing budget. Rule of thumb is no less than 10%, and I've seen people spend up to 20% on their marketing or on their marketing. Now, that's not just new lead generation, and this is what another important part is you want to factor into your marketing budget the combination of what it's going to cost to generate a new lead, but also to remarket to that lead. And that brings me to my final point, is if you're just spending all of your budget, like this client that I shared with you, on new lead generation, but you're not using multi-channel marketing to follow up with your leads, and you're not putting any money into digital follow-up or digital marketing through text message, email, retargeting, or whatever it may be, then you're going to struggle to ever get a return on your investment. So it's about finding a healthy balance. My rule of thumb that I use is about 50 to 60% of my budget for marketing goes towards new lead generation. The balance goes towards remarketing or re-engaging my leads in some way, shape, or form. Now, with that said, that ratio may change as your budget grows. So for an example, if you're just starting out and you have a small database, you're going to spend more money on new lead generation versus if you have a giant database, you're probably going to spend more money on remarketing to your database than just generating new leads. So right now, we have a database of over 100,000 leads in our database. So what we do is we have a formula where we look at, out of the 100,000 leads, how many of them are worth remarketing to, and we determine that number, and then we try to spend $100 to $150 a month on remarketing to those leads versus new lead generation. And if you follow this formula that I'm sharing with you, you're going to put yourself in a position of power and strength, because you're going to have a balanced budget spending, and also knowing how many leads that you need coming in versus how many leads you need to remarket to in your database. So armed with this knowledge, now you're ready to go after your sales goal. So what is the first step? Step number 1 is what you want to do is you want to set your sales goal. Step number 2 is you want to take the conversion rate that you'll have to hit that sales goal, which will lead to the amount of leads that you need to generate. So for example, if your goal is 100 transactions a year or 100 sales a year, what you do is you'd put that into 2%, which is the industry standard, and that will tell you how many leads that you need to generate. Then what you need to do is figure out what your cost per lead is going to be on that set of leads, what you can afford. So can you afford $5 per lead? Can you afford $10 per lead based on your budget? And making sure that you're factoring in not only the new lead gen cost, but the cost of following up through digital marketing into that budget. And that's the last and final step. Now with that formula, you are ready to kick ass with your lead generation game plan. And this is the formula, by the way, that juggernauts in the real estate industry like Barry Jenkins use to generate new leads, but also make sure they're following up with their leads in their database. And this is the same exact formula that Grant Wise teaches his clients with his product Whitley, which helps with remarketing. And also this formula for myself, I've had personal experience of having amazing success. And this is what we do for our real estate business and what we teach over here at Run360. You see, the biggest problem in our industry is not lead generation. It's following up with those leads. So factoring in to make sure you have a really good CRM, making sure you have a really good database that's organized by stage, okay, by lead source, and by tags. So that way that you can set up custom content to follow up with your leads. Because remember, no matter what lead source that you choose to invest in, not every single person is going to be ready to do business with you now or in the near future. So you need really good follow-up best practices. So I break this down by speed to lead, then which is a 10 by 10 campaign, and then going into a 24 touch over the course of 12 months, using multi-channel marketing, and then spending a little bit of money on retargeting, and now you have a winning formula. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, again, smash that subscribe button. Share this with your colleagues if they need to hear this formula too, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.